I want to show you something here. So this is me painting a space shuttle, and the video's been sped up a little bit, but I want you to see what's going on here. I'm adding detail, but the general form is established already. You have the shape, the contours, the shadows, the highlights, all the major things that help turn the figure are there. And right now I'm adding things like specular highlights, small details, lines, things that indicate size, things that indicate mechanics, things that indicate that this is not just a fluid organic shape, but that it is a constructed form, a man-made object. And something that I'm often asked by young artists when they show me their artwork, a comic book store or places where they'll bring in, a notebook full of art, is what can they do to get better? And one thing that I say is concentrate on your form first. And this is something that every artist does. You concentrate on establishing your form and then you add details. Where if you see a young artist, typically what they have is a very, very detailed piece of art. Like, say, for example, a character with a lot of armor, a lot of weapons or costume details, things like that. And what you find is that, well, detail's pretty easy. You're just adding little lines, little scratches, things that indicate that something's happening, things that indicate more than just the contours of the form. Things like armor plating or, Aztecing, which is a technique used to make mechanical forms look larger. So what you see here is that I've got this space shuttle and I have my shadows, I have my midtones, I have my highlights, and I'm just going through and I'm adding little lines. I'm adding things that indicate, hey, this is something that's made up of smaller pieces. This is something that's much bigger than what it seems like. And so in doing so, it adds to the realism. And that's something that's a step that a lot of young people, starting out don't have a good grasp on yet. And I hope that that kind of clears it up. So I'm in Adobe Photoshop. I'm using a Wacom stylus to do this work. And I'm just kind of going around and painting these lines on here. Now here, I have made a couple of adjustments to the form as I'm working because, nothing's ever perfect. And sometimes you have an idea and say, oh, I want it to be this way. A few minutes ago, I added some shadows underneath the rear stabilizer and the engines. There are these two like nacelles that are up on the top rear of the space shuttle that cover some of the engine form, I guess. And now I'm adding a bay door that's opened, and I decided that since this is a space scene, that it might look a little more appropriate with that bay door open. And so I'm going in and I'm just darkening that. I'm adding some structure in here. And you see, it's as easy as that. You just go in and you define a general shape. And that's all I've done here is I put some gray and some darker grays. And now I'm going in with some lines. And suddenly when you start adding these lines, it looks like something. It looks like there's some kind of substance to this. It's not just a cutout shape. It's something that's a real structure. So that's my tip, regarding detail, especially with young artists, that detail is great, but it should always come last. It should never come first. And the more you concentrate on the form, the easier it's going to be for the detail to make sense and to have meaning when you wrap that detail around the form in the end. Now, earlier I said that, when you're adding these lines, these breaks in the surface, you're contributing to the realism. What I meant by that was not necessarily realism as in this looks like it's real. I meant believability. Because if you have something that is like the space shuttle, if it only contains the form, the contours that are accented and made 3D appearing by the shadows and the midtones and the highlights, then you have something that looks like a big hunk of plastic. But the more you break the surfaces up, and that's what adding detail really is breaking a surface up, whether it be with texture, whether it be with brush strokes that add to the texture, or actual detail like lines and armor plating or other actual pieces of information that you add to the art, this is what creates a believable image. And you have to remember that all of this stuff, if you understand how to wrap light around a form, you can then wrap detail around that form.